We are at the end of the semester with chapters 24, 25, and 26 being covered in this final week presentation. Most staff enjoy working with people the most and often say that is the reason that they want to be a case manager. In reality, it can be up to half the time, though, is spent on monitoring the client regularly to be sure there is movement toward the desired goals and documenting that progress in the electronic health record. Monitoring. Case managers monitor their clients to ensure that the clients are receiving the services that were planned for them. Documentation and monitoring indicates that good case management is taking place. Monitoring also allows the case manager to spot problems early and possibly prevent greater difficulties later. Monitoring also gives the client a certain amount of support. It can prevent relapse, hospitalizations, or incarcerations, or even more severe consequences such as suicide or overdose. So, monitor your caseload. What is monitoring? Talking to the clients regularly to see if they feel they are making progress and to learn whether they are satisfied with the services. Contact people in agencies or programs who are primarily responsible for your clients meeting their goals, such as talking to the primary counselor or the housing manager at the sober living environment. You would also be contacting other people and agencies involved with your client. So, for example, their parents or teachers or ministers. You must have an adult client's permission or release of information to do this, or the permission of the child's parent. Monitoring drug test results, attendance, participation, and progress. Remember to collaborate with the agency who is working with your client by responding to their concerns and attending any planning meetings, returning phone calls in a timely manner, and discussing realistically and non-defensively your client. Many of the services given to clients are paid for with public funds or tax dollars. As a case manager, you choose the services and the length of time that the client will have these services. Funding sources, including insurance, expect case managers to use the funds efficiently and effectively to provide services to clients. It is expected that the public funds will be used to develop successful plans that move clients toward recovery and greater independence. As a case manager, you are in effect authorizing services and payments for the other agency to work with your client. Authorize services that you think will benefit the client. Don't waste money on things that won't help for the long-term success of the client. For example, if the client always leaves the sober living environment after 1 week and it doesn't seem to be helping, don't place the client in that sober living environment for a third time. Try something else. It is important to have good working relationships with the agencies which provide services to your client. Sometimes those agencies, though, are difficult to work with. They may assume that they know the client better than you do. They might change the plan or the services being given. They may even discharge the client without telling you, or take a client they cannot handle just to fill an empty bed. It is tempting to become angry, but that can spoil long-term working relationships. Make every effort to be responsive to the concerns of the providers. Be available for meeting about your client, refrain from gossip and blame, and use your communication skills to raise concerns directly to the agency. When issues arise at provider agencies, it is time to advocate for your client. Maybe asking, how can we work together to help this client get more from services? What can I do to help you better serve this person? If you cannot get good services at a provider agency, you may need to find another agency. Sometimes situations in clients' lives require you to advocate to higher authorities, such as your supervisor, the head of the agency, the person's state representative, or even a government agency. It is somewhat lazy and arrogant to expect clients to always come to you, especially as a case manager. Clients live and work and strive toward their goals in a community. When you visit them in these settings, you get a truer picture of who they are. Visiting clients outside the office helps you see the real obstacles and accomplishments of your clients. When we do visit a client in their own home, for example, it is best to make an appointment or notification that you are coming. We are not trying to come unannounced or to check up on the client. That is someone else's job, such as probation. We are going into the field to get a true picture of who the client is and those real accomplishments and obstacles. There are 4 steps to responding to a crisis. Respond immediately. Construct the best course of action under the present circumstances. Listen to your client. Help your client begin to look ahead. Listen to that voice inside of you that is saying that something is wrong or the client doesn't seem themselves. Remember, it is up to you to ask questions, to make observations, and to intervene. Crises are destabilizing, but they also afford an opportunity to grow. Whenever possible, try to foresee critical events and prevent them before they happen. Follow-up means that the case manager went back to check on things after a crisis. Follow-up often stabilizes a situation that is unstable. You are following up to make sure that the changes are made, they're working well for the client, and to make sure that the client is doing well since the last contact. This can avoid other problems or relapses. See the video presentation on terminating a case in the module. Chapter 26, Terminating the Case. There are many reasons why cases are closed. The client and case manager agree that the client is ready to move on, and the problems have been resolved. Maybe the client dies or moves away. If the client moves and requests it, the client's records can be transferred to another agency in another location. Maybe the funding source will no longer finance services. If you and your client have not completed your work, look for other options for the client, such as maybe community support groups. It is unethical to just drop the client, even if they don't have any funding. Maybe the client no longer wants the services. Some clients are not satisfied, maybe they became bored, or they're overcome with ambivalence. You cannot find the client. Sometimes clients disappear, maybe to indicate that they're just not interested in services at this time. When a client drops out of services and disappears, it is important to do your follow-up attempts to the client. Call their cell phone. Leave messages if you have a release of information. Write a letter to outreach the client. Make sure that your case progress notes and your discharge summary reflects your attempts to contact the client that has dropped out and disappears. When the client is dissatisfied with the services, sit down and learn why they are not pleased. This will help with improvements for the future, or perhaps for other clients. You may be able to learn something about yourself or the agency that needs to change. When you cannot find the client, it is important to document, as mentioned earlier, your attempts to reach the client in the chart. You don't need to call the police or search endlessly for the client. Usually send a termination letter and give the client a heads up that their case is closing, giving them a chance to return if they choose to. This is what I want to see in the discharge session demonstration on video number 5. A successful termination, the final exit interview. Of course, your case may not be successful, and that's fine. But the client and you should have a chance to meet with you and discuss termination. Recognize their feelings and respond empathically. Some clients have anxiety about leaving treatment and therapy, so acknowledging that will be important. Perhaps the client did not terminate in a satisfactory manner, and so again recognizing the feelings that they have and respond empathically. Use the interview to summarize the reasons for termination. Whether it is successful or unsuccessful, the client needs to know why they are being discharged. Review the accomplishments that they did have and also honestly discuss the continued needs for the client. Gather feedback and always welcome the client to return in the future. There should be a sense of reassurance during the final interview that the client is not being cut off or dumped or abandoned. See the grading rubric for video number 5 on the termination session. Termination documentation. At the end of closing the case, there will be a final interview with a progress note. You need a discharge letter, so be sure to get forwarding address to send the letter. A copy of the letter will remain in the client's file. There's a sample letter on page 443. And discharge summary form. You will be handing in the discharge letter and the discharge summary form that you will fill out on your client. Upload these into the module. Look at the discharge summary form and you will see all of these elements on the form. Don't skimp on filling out the discharge summary. Since the client is gone, some staff don't think that this form is important and they just rush through it to get it done. However, the discharge summary form is very important. It should summarize the most important points of what took place during the time when you were working together with this client. The discharge summary will potentially be seen by other professionals who work with the individual in the future. Or at least it will be seen by your supervisor. So it's a good way for you to point out the great work that you did. A discharge summary is a marketing tool for your agency and your work with the individual. It does contain specific and useful information. So let's say the client was discharged unsuccessfully. Let's say when the client comes back, by quickly looking at the previous discharge summary, you'll be able to know what stage of change, what the recommendations were at the last time when the client left the agency. So it's very specific and useful information on a discharge summary form. The letter. See the sample letter on page 443 in your textbook. Individualize your letter. Be positive and hopeful while always inviting the client to contact you or the agency in the future should the need arise. If this was an unsuccessful case, you would still write a letter to the client. You would include referrals for further services. Sometimes agencies have a form letter that is sent to the client, giving them a timeline in which to return prior to closing the case officially. It is now time to say goodbye. You have learned everything you need to know about case management and treatment. Well, at least enough to start your internship. Case management is defined as assessment, planning, linking, and monitoring. You may remember this from the very first week. I have enjoyed working with all of you and wish you the best in your future endeavors.